The ballot paper is the same everywhere across the country. It's a choice between yes and no, a two-horse race.
On Wurundjeri country in inner city Melbourne, just over 2 weeks ago, a few dozen Aboriginal health workers gathered to watch live coverage of the referendum results.
Hope is also a very powerful medicine.
In less than 90 minutes, it was clear that nearly every state and territory had voted no to the creation of an Indigenous voice.
So there it is. The Indigenous Voice referendum has been defeated.
The atmosphere in the room was pretty dismal. I mean, quietly, a lot of people kept saying to me, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And of course you say, "Yes, I am. Yes, I am." But I needed a bit of time by myself just to probably offload by myself.
After the crushing defeat of the Voice referendum, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders like Auntie Jill Gallagher are back at work.
Busy day?
Gunditjmara elder Auntie Jill fought for years to see her people recognised in the Constitution. But she's now wondering if there was a better way to win the Voice campaign.
How many citizens out there fully understood what this voice was? Not a lot.
I don't think we lost it on the basis of what the Yes campaign did. We were honest. We reached as many Australians as we could. We worked hard.
Together, we can embrace the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
After he was elected last year, Anthony Albanese promised he'd hold a referendum in his first term as Prime Minister. For the next few months, Australians didn't hear much about the Voice, but by November, the unofficial No campaign leapt out of the gate. The National Party lined up for the No case, and Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price became one of the loudest voices opposing the referendum.
We have to stop dividing our nation along the lines of race.
Within weeks, some seasoned First Nations campaigners were urging the government to delay the vote over fears that the Yes case was ill-prepared and few Australians understood the proposal.
You understand that we need to win a double majority, so we need to win the popular vote and the majority of states, that we needed the time to build the support in a space where there wasn't a noisy advertising No campaign. So we made a recommendation that if you wanted to win this, you needed to run it in 2024.
To postpone might have been to make it, to cancel it forever. There was no guarantee that would go there. To wait for whoever's elected next term, in the next federal parliament, you just don't know.
The government stuck to a 2023 referendum date. Yes 23 became the official campaign and was built by Indigenous leaders, unionists and non-Indigenous political operatives from the left and the right. It brought in around 70,000 volunteers and millions in philanthropic funding and donations. But when Yes 23 launched, polls showed support for the Voice was declining. Bunjalung woman Larissa Baldwin-Roberts leads the progressive campaign group Get Up. She grew increasingly concerned that Yes 23 was slow to launch.
In the official campaign, there was such a huge delay in getting a campaign out the door. There were plenty of people that I talked to, in Indigenous leadership, who were seeing this and asking questions, and I was saying to them, you're absolutely right, we need to have been out there, we have to go now.
Larissa Baldwin-Roberts says she then urged Yes 23 to tap into Get Up's logistical expertise and experience in running campaigns with Aboriginal communities.
We're a big movement, we have a lot of technical skill, there's a lot of money in that campaign, you could have brought them into the campaign. And so to disregard Indigenous knowledges in a campaign about us, to me, I thought was reprehensible.
Yes, yes, yes!
But Get Up and Yes 23 ultimately could not agree on strategy and ran separate campaigns.
We were on the ground, we were working in First Nations communities, in Indigenous communities. We had the land councils that put resources towards it.
When the Liberal Party announced in April that it would oppose the Voice, many Indigenous leaders believed the proposal was as good as dead in the water.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much for You need bipartisan support to get a referendum up.
Mick Gooder was one of the architects of the proposed 24-person voice model. With the yes case hemorrhaging support after Dutton's announcement, he took a bold step and pleaded publicly for other Indigenous leaders to compromise on the powers of the voice.
I was approached by people from the right who said, look, if we can compromise on the question, there might be an opportunity to have another crack at getting Dutton and Littleproud back on side.
Yes 23 campaigner Thomas Mayo doesn't think there was any compromise or detail that would have won Conservative support.
I didn't feel like they were ever going to come on board with anything. I thought everything that they had, that they were proposing wasn't from a genuine place. The 15 questions that Peter Dutton put out, we're only looking for more reasons to oppose it. Certainly didn't feel that he was ever there to discuss things with us in good faith.
Mick Gooder was one of several Aboriginal leaders who was dismayed that the government chose not to put out draft legislation on the voice design.
I thought that was another fatal mistake we made by not releasing the detail. They should have just said, we're having regional structures, we're going to have a state, each jurisdiction will have a state voice, and then we'll have a national voice. What could be more simple than that? People have got to know what they're voting for, and if they don't know what they're voting for, they generally vote no.
Today I announce that referendum day will be the 14th of October.
By the time a 6-week referendum campaign on the voice began in earnest in late August, the no campaign messaging had gained a strong foothold.
If you don't understand, if you don't know the detail, if you don't know, vote no.
Its issues, I guess that's what you can call
The debate became a febrile fight, rife with misinformation.
The voice will be ATSEC on steroids.
The voice will be used to steal Australian land and assets.
Exposing Indigenous people across the country to increased levels of racism and abuse.
It was expected that we would have a robust campaign. The disinformation was not just about being dishonest to the Australian people, to confuse them and to cause fear, but it was also about intimidation. There was a mobilisation of social media, and there was a lot of racist vitriol. It was targeted at leaders, especially Indigenous leaders, to try and scare us or try and intimidate us out of speaking up. It was unprecedented.
As a campaigner, honestly, I've never seen a campaign like this in this country, in terms of the way that racism was mobilised in the debate. And for us, it wasn't just about losing, it was about the damage that was being done, the idea that our kids are going to school every single day and having to deal with this debate.
In the final weeks before the vote, First Nations communities did all they could to rally for yes.
It was way too late. We should have been informing and educating people well before that referendum date was called.
The stunning defeat of the Voice referendum now leaves a policy vacuum, and it's heightened existing trauma in communities across the country. Many Aboriginal families still live in abject poverty, and there is no national representative group that can advise governments. Indigenous leaders say the status quo cannot continue.
I think that the government needs to show its confidence in Aboriginal Australia and the efforts that we've made, especially in closing the gap now. I'm sick to death of process. I'm sick to death of red tape. I want the rubber to hit the road and the money to get in at community level.
Pat Turner leads the Coalition of Peaks, dozens of the major Indigenous organisations across Australia. She's concerned the referendum has taken focus off policies needed to close the gap.
There's been a huge focus on the voice, but now that's done and dusted, we have to move on with closing the gap. I've met with every cabinet in Australia except the Albanese cabinet, which I'm hoping to do before we meet again in National Cabinet.
The government has told 7:30 its efforts towards closing the gap have continued consistently throughout the campaign.
This year, when we held the referendum, the gap has widened. And so, I thought it was if we didn't take this opportunity, we would be wondering probably for another 20 years.
Despite their heartache, First Nations people will use this defeat as fire for the next fight.
I think we go back to our old people and we look at the struggles they went through, but they kept fighting. And I think that's where we've got to go back to and honour those people who came before us, and we can't give up.